Good morning. I hope that everyone is doing well. Okay, so we are gonna be starting off this live session with a doozy. So I recently made a very long post. As a matter of fact, I made it 18 hours ago in my group. And there were some people who needed some clarification. There were others who were offended. And there were also people who agreed with me. And I think that this is a very important discussion to have. So what I'd like to do is, for all of the YouTubers out there who are not members of the Facebook group, I'd like to read my post to you quickly and then talk about some of the things that I went over in the post. Hey, we've got somebody tuning in. Hello! If you could just drop me a comment down in the comments section, that would be great. That way I know the comments are working. So I'm going to read the post, go over everything in detail, right? Because there's only so much detail you can really put into a Facebook post. And then I'm going to answer some of the questions that people had. And people are tuning in. That's great. Hello, good morning. If somebody could just drop me a comment down in the comments section so that I know the comments are working, just in case somebody has a question while we're talking. I would greatly appreciate it. Okay. Okay, while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead and read the post. And people who jump in and join the live session, after the fact, they can watch it from the beginning. Okay, so this post specifically is about puppy mills, puppy farms, Amish puppy farms, and buying from pet stores. So let me explain so everyone understands. Pet store puppies come from puppy mills. Brokers and third-party sellers sell puppies from puppy mills. There is no way around it. Responsible breeders would never sell to a mill, store, or broker ever. Puppy mills have AKC registered dogs. Puppy mills have AKC and USDA inspected kennels. Same for Amish puppy farms. You are not saving a dog by buying them from a store. You are part of the problem. You are the reason why that mama dog has to have another litter at 9 years old. You are the reason why they live in cages with no affection, care, or love. You are not saving them. You are feeding into a vicious game that is designed to pull at your heartstrings for someone to profit off of your kindness. If you want to be a martyr, go to a pound and save a life. If you want to be a responsible person, do your research and buy from a responsible breeder. Not a friend who had puppies because they suck as humans and let their dog get pregnant. Not a backyard breeder who doesn't even try to better themselves or research before breeding. And last but not least, not a puppy mill supporting, disease-infested, dead puppies in the freezer so you don't see them pet store. And I'm going to talk more in depth about that here in a minute. Do you think I sound mad? You bet your sweet ass I'm livid. Every time I see someone post about a puppy they rescued from a pet store, or someone like this who bought a dog to breed without the slightest clue about how bad this is for future puppy buyers, not to mention the puppies themselves. And I'll talk about that in a second. There will be people here who will read this and get offended. Good. Get offended and do something about it. Tell everyone you know not to buy from pet stores. When a coworker says they rescued a pet store puppy, explain to them why they are the problem. Hold people accountable. End of rant. Okay, so before I start answering some of the questions that people had, There are a few points that I want to touch on that I didn't elaborate on in the post that I want to make clear for people. Now, point number 1, responsible breeders would never sell to a puppy mill, store, or broker ever. I want to better explain this because this is one of those areas where pet stores do a really good job of lying to people. And they say, oh, well, we have these responsible breeders and look at their beautiful facility and look how the dogs are running around. Right? I'm sure probably seen the Petland ads where the dogs are romping around in the grass at this beautiful facility, right? So the part that they don't tell you is that those places, if the breeders were responsible breeders, would not be selling to a pet store. Because that would be like ripping my heart out and stomping it on the ground. And if you're wondering what that crunching sound is, that's Velocity. She has a chew behind me, so I apologize if you can hear the popping. I needed everybody to be quiet. Good morning, Allison. I'm so glad you're here. So, my puppies, and I am speaking for responsible breeders right now. My puppies are an extension of me. I love them. I love them with all my heart. I cry when they go. I talk about each and every one of them long, long after they're gone. Because you give, as a breeder, you give a piece of yourself to each puppy because each one has their own little personality, their own little spark in life, their own thing that makes them unique. And you love them for it. And that doesn't go away when they go to their forever home. You still feel that. Someone who is okay with taking that puppy that they should have poured their whole life and soul into and then sending it off in a truck, like a moving truck, in a cage with no air conditioning. Sometimes they drug them to go be delivered to a pet store, making multiple stops all across the U.S. because it's not a direct drive to that one store. No, they stop all over the U.S. They spend days and days and days in those trucks. And yes, there are a lot of them that don't make it. To then live a life in a cage with glass in the front so that people can come over and poke at them and go, oh yeah, that's the one I want, and thump on the glass, and kids are banging on the glass, right? And people are constantly pulling you out of cages and putting you back down and putting you out of cages, putting you back down in little play areas so you can get to know the puppy. I've been into these places multiple times. I cannot tell you the percentage of puppies that are already at 8, 9, 10 weeks old showing huge signs of stress, huge behavioral problems that they should not have at that age because they're just kept in cramped little quarters, right? No breeder who, in my opinion, can call themselves a breeder or a human being for that matter, would be okay with putting a puppy in that situation. The only people who are okay with putting a puppy in that situation are people who are 100% detached. And those people are the same people who are not loving on their puppies, not handling them. They're in a barn outside, right? The ones that make it. The ones that don't, they don't care. They don't get proper vet care, right? There is no breeder, again, who is a good human being who is okay with that situation. They're just not. I'm telling you, they're not. So when I say responsible breeders never sell to a mill, store, or broker, who, by the way, all use the same type of travel systems, they all have the same problems with puppies, right, dying. That's what I'm talking about. We're not okay with that. Now, the next part is puppy mills have AKC registered dogs. Now, I want to make some things clear about this because I think that some people took this the wrong way. I'm not saying that AKC is a bad registry. It is a business. AKC is one of the best planned businesses in the dog world. It is for registering dogs, tracking lineage, and aside from that, they hold shows and competitions and things like that. So, first and foremost, it is a business. They don't care if the breeder is a responsible breeder who does DNA testing, genetic testing, health testing, right? They don't care if the breeder is a puppy mill or a puppy farm producing hundreds of puppies a year for pet stores. They don't care. They get paid all along the way. So for them, it's just a matter of meeting the bare basic requirements of life, right? So you'll see that these huge kennels, they have what's called AKC inspected or USDA inspected kennels. And people think that that's a talking point, like, oh, look at me, I am AKC inspected, I'm, USDA inspected. That just means that if the animal control officer was to show up at your house, that they wouldn't confiscate your dogs because they have food and water and a roof over their head. That's not really a bragging point, right? For the AKC specifically, it means that you're keeping up with your records. And if they point to a dog, you can pull their paperwork and say, here's that dog, here's all the litters that they had, here's their vet paperwork. That's all that means. It's not something to boast about. Again, it's part of the bare minimum. Now, specifically, I'm just talking about breeders in the US. I know that we do have some breeders who are in the UK and Canada, so obviously these stipulations don't apply to them because they have different systems. I forgot to mention that in my post. Okay, so the next part that people had questions about was the part about, hang on. Hi Velocity. Did you want to say hi to everybody? Hi, I love you. Did you eat your chew? Was it delicious? It was. Okay, great. Can you go lay down? Good girl. Okay. She's like, Mom, I'm done. Okay. You're not saving them. This line here. If you want to be a martyr, go to the pound and save a life. Now, this line specifically rubbed some people the wrong way. And there's a very specific group of people that I'm referring to here. And these are the ones who, hi Brenda, good morning. These are the ones who go around bashing breeders, right? Because they rescued a dog. They are the ones who say things like, I rescued a dog from a pet store. And the only person that sentence or that mentality is serving is the person who's saying it, right? It makes them feel better about a mistake or a bad choice. And that is really what I have a problem with, is the semantics of it. Because you didn't rescue a puppy from a pet store, you bought one, you are part of the problem, and now You have to decide how you're going to go about it going forward. And let me be very clear to the people who were offended by this post. I understand that there are people who have no idea that these puppies come from puppy mills. I understand that. And for those people, my heart goes out to them, because now every time somebody asks you where you got your puppy, it is now your responsibility to have a conversation with them about the mistake that you made, because you have a very unique opportunity to educate others and say, I bought a puppy from a pet store. I didn't know that those puppies come from puppy mills. I love my puppy very much, but I don't recommend that you do that. Here are some things that you can do, right, to, reach out to a local rescue group, to buy from a responsible breeder, right? So there's all these things. But there are some people that want to take this narrative of rescuing from a pet store and turn it into something that makes them feel better about what they did. And for those of you who don't know, I have a degree in psychology, which is why phrases like that cause me internal discomfort, because I know that it's just someone who feels bad about a choice that they made or a mistake that they made. But you have to take that next step. You have to say, hey, I didn't know any better. I made a mistake. No one's perfect, right? It's how you address it going forward that makes all the difference. So, for example, Suze, my wife, she purchased a puppy, from a pet store. This was way before I knew her. Hi. She didn't know any better. I know, Velocity. I know. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. Okay. Okay, go lay down. Good girl. So, she didn't know any better. And she had all kinds of health problems with the dog. Like, it was problematic, as it usually is with pet store puppies. So she and I discussed at length when I met her, and I was like, oh my God, he's so cute. Where'd you get him? And she was like, yeah, well, I bought him from a pet store. And I was like, ooh, that's not good. And she was like, yeah, I didn't know, it was just back in the day, and I went to the pet store and I saw him and I fell in love, and I felt so bad for him because he was in this cage, and so I purchased him and brought him home. But the difference is, if you were to talk to her about that now, she would tell you everything that went wrong, all of the health problems that he had, and she would say, hey, I don't recommend that you do that. Hey, do you know that those puppies come from puppy mills, right? That is the difference. She doesn't go around saying, I rescued a puppy from a pet store. No. That's not how that works. So, when I'm talking about being a martyr, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. Next point, backyard breeder. I did use this term a couple of times in this post, and people were confused about what is a backyard breeder, what is a responsible breeder, so let's talk about that. So a responsible breeder is going to do genetic testing, right, to determine what kind of genetic disorders the dog may hopefully not have, but may also carry. Because for those of you who are not familiar with genetics, if you have one dog that carries a genetic disorder and another dog who also carries that genetic disorder, and you breed them together, while these two dogs may not ever show that disorder because they just carry it, when you breed them together, You create puppies who all have that disorder. And that is where the responsibility is, right? Genetic testing is not 100%. There's still a lot about genetics that we don't know. For example, we don't know, nor can we test for the poodle fading gene, which causes dogs like Velocity to go from this deep, rich brown all the way to almost white, right? So there are a lot of things that we don't know, that we learn over time. But what we do know is that there are tests and things that we can do as responsible breeders to try to limit those things from happening. For example, there is OFA hip testing and pen hip testing. And for those of you who don't know, that's when you take your breeding stock, you go and get an x-ray, they submit the x-rays to a team of vets who then come back and say the quality of those dogs' hips. And now Shazam's gonna start barking. So is that testing 100%? No, it's not. It is subject to the vets who are reviewing the x-rays. But does it give us a good indication of something that we otherwise wouldn't be able to see? Yes, absolutely. When you get an x-ray of your dog's hips, you can see, are they already dysplastic? Do they have hip dysplasia already at 2 years old, right? You can clearly see that in an x-ray. So doing those health testing, and there's all sorts of different health testing, it varies by breed, so I encourage you, if you are breeding, to make sure that you look up the appropriate tests for your breed. If you are a hybrid breeder and breeding 2 different breeds, it is your responsibility to do the testing for both of those breeds. Please keep that in mind. You know, that is all part of being a responsible breeder. The next step in being a responsible breeder is that you need to be doing some kind of curriculum with your puppies, right? Simply keeping them alive and clean until 8 weeks old isn't going to cut it anymore. Those are the breeders of 30 years ago. We're not those breeders anymore. We have so much research that shows that doing early neurological stimulation, doing scent stimulation, walking puppies through curriculum that boosts their confidence, creates puppies that are better adapted to go to their new homes and be successful, right? Because there are a lot of people who get a puppy, get completely overwhelmed, and within 2 weeks, they're either trying to return it to the breeder or they're trying to resell it or dump it at a shelter, right? Whatever the case may be. So by setting those puppies up for success while starting them early on trying to learn the concepts of potty training, right? And there's a lot more that goes into it. That is part of being a responsible breeder, right? Because you're not just producing puppies to then sell. You're producing quality family members who can successfully integrate into a new home and add a new dynamic to that family. And that's powerful. That's very powerful. Whether it's a pet, whether it's a service dog, whether it's an emotional support dog, autism support, whatever the case may be, that is very powerful. And it makes a difference. I can tell you, having purchased a lot of puppies, you can tell the difference between puppies where breeders did almost nothing with them and puppies who have been taken through a curriculum. They've been encouraged to learn and experience new things, right? They've started their potty training. When I tell you it is like night and day, trust me, it is like night and day. It makes a huge difference. So, okay. Anyway, I got off on a tangent there talking about how to be a responsible breeder. So, what do irresponsible breeders do? Nothing. They just produce puppies. And that's it. So, you know, some people call them irresponsible breeders. Some people call them backyard breeders, right? Where people just put two dogs together with no regard of, you know, the puppies that they'll create. And they just, you know, try to sell their puppies. So, I wanted to clarify that. The other point that I wanted to clarify quickly before I get into the questions is the whole reason why this post was created is because I am a member of a poodle breeding group. And there was an individual who posted information on the puppy that she purchased. And I knew from the moment that I looked at it that the puppy came from a puppy mill. And the post was talking about how she couldn't find the breeder's information online, that she found a phone number and tried to call it. She was waiting for somebody to call her back. And what was the deal with that? Like, why was it such a secret who the breeder was? Well, I commented on the post to explain, hey, I'm assuming that you bought this puppy from a pet store, which she did. And I clarified that the big secret is that it's a puppy mill. So she's wanting to know about the parents, their temperaments, all of these things that are very, very important when it comes to breeding healthy, temperamentally sound dogs. She's not going to be able to get any of that information because the puppy came from a puppy mill. And on top of all that, as if that wasn't bad enough, I continued to speak with her on the post, and she commented, which I added to my thread here. Hang on. If it would load. She commented, well, it's not showing it to me. Okay. That's weird. Why didn't it load her comment there? So anyway, she had commented that the puppy is 4 months old and she can already hear when the puppy is running around that there's clicking in the hind legs. She doesn't know if it's the hips or what. That's very common because these puppies live a majority of their life in crates or on grates, which are just as bad, which is horrible for their joints. So, okay. There is that. So let me scroll down here to see. I think I answered everybody's questions from the post. Oh, here was another question. One of the things, the comments that I made to this person was that the sad part is they purchased from a pet store when they could have purchased from a breeder for a fraction of the cost. And I wanted to clarify that. So these pet stores, what they do is jack up the price of the dog and then offer financing. Which, if you ever take a look at the financing, the interest rate is astronomical. Like, you're never going to pay off that dog. And the prices are insane. I'm talking $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 depending on the breed. You could go to a responsible, ethical breeder and get 3 or 4 puppies for that price. Like, it's just, it's crazy. So I wanted to clarify that. Also, another point to think about is that those puppy mill puppies are going to have a lot of health problems. So that's something that you have to take into account when you're factoring in that price. Not only are you paying a higher price, but you're going to be paying that higher price all throughout the dog's life because, like she mentioned, the dog's 4 months old and the hips are already clicking, which is a really bad sign. So, okay. I think that was all of the questions that people had. One of the other points that somebody made, which was a very good point, and one of the reasons why I like to have these type of discussions, because it gets people thinking, is she said that she purchased a dog from another woman who had purchased the dog from a pet store. And she was like, am I part of the problem? For me, it's all about how you educate others, right? Because that's my big push, is to educate so that other people can make informed choices. So if you are saying things like, I rescued a pet store puppy, okay, well, you may want to rethink that, because that's not setting the stage for somebody else to learn from that mistake. That is setting the stage for somebody else to say, oh, okay, I want to do something good too. I'm going to go rescue a puppy from a pet store, right? It perpetuates the problem. There's no education. There's no bringing them down to earth and saying, hey, yeah, don't do this. But here's what you can do instead. Here are some resources for responsible rescues where you can get a dog who's had proper vet care. Or here's resources for a responsible breeder. You can talk to them about their health testing and see the difference it makes. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's all about the conversation that you have. And like I said in my post, I knew that there would be some people who would be offended. But what you have to think about is, if these kind of conversations offend you, you have to sit down and think to yourself. You don't have to explain anything to me. You owe me nothing. You owe no one else anything. But you owe it to yourself to sit down and think, why did this upset me? What about this upsets me? Is it because I don't agree? Is it because I agree, but I didn't know any better at the time, and so I feel bad about what I did? All of those are perfectly legitimate answers. And again, you don't owe me anything. I am here to encourage you to think critically, right? To be an educated buyer, and to encourage you as your dog's advocate to help others. And that's my big push. I'm not here to offend you. I'm not here to upset you. I don't want you to be mad at me, but I understand that for some people, these topics are sensitive because they purchased from a pet store, right? I mean, I was reading this post to Suze last night, and I could see the pain in her face because she purchased a puppy from a pet store before. She knows what that feels like. I did it when I was in college. I know why you're offended. I know why reading things like this hurts you. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm sorry. If you're waiting for an apology, it's not coming, because I am here to challenge you to do better. I know you can do better. I know you can encourage others to do better. And sometimes to get to that point, people need to feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. It's okay. We live in this world right now where everything has to be PC. Everything has to be sugar-coated, and everybody gets a trophy, and no one can get their feelings hurt. I am a firm believer that sometimes, in order to grow, you have to have that epiphany moment. Just like there are those who have the epiphany moment about, oh my gosh, this kibble that I'm feeding is not good for my dog. I need to do better. Sometimes people will get offended, right? When I point out that what they're feeding is not the best that they could be feeding. And that is on them. If they want to be offended, then okay. It's what you do with that emotion. Are you just going to let it consume you, or are you going to do something about it? Right? So that's the difference. That is the point of my post. So I wanted to clarify those things and talk a little bit more about puppy mills, right? Pet stores, and why responsible breeders don't sell to them. So, okay. I hope that helped some people, right, who are looking to learn. Now let me go through the comments here because I've seen that people are commenting, which is great. So let me scroll through here to the beginning. Okay. All right. Let's go. Jaleesa said, Allie, I was just scrolling through the Facebook and wanted to say hello. Hope you're having a beautiful day. Thank you. I hope you're having a beautiful day too. Okay. Oh, okay. Gail popped on to tell us something not related, but still awesome. Gail said, while I'm here, I wanted to let you know about New Joint Plus, which is one of the supplements that I recommend. She said they love it and it seems to have helped my palms patella. That is fantastic news. That's great. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Don't forget when you're supplementing for your dogs that you give them a break sometimes, right? So don't just give it to them every day for months and months and months. With some of the more extreme cases, you'll want to do that, but especially if you're just starting out or if it's a low-grade patella issue, give it to them for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, then give them a week or two off. Then start the supplement again. What you don't want to do is you don't want the body to get used to just having that supplement all the time, right? You want the body to actually be using it. So, but Gail, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. So Gail also said, I have a puppy mill palm and now feel like I saved her. Yeah, there are a lot of people who feel that way. There's nothing wrong with feeling like you saved a dog. And I don't want people to misunderstand me. Let me clarify. I was looking for a dog for my dad and his wife. And they love Pomeranians, of course. And he was adamant about wanting to rescue a dog. And unfortunately, the rescues were just ridiculous. I mean, they were, not approving people left and right if they worked outside of the home. They were wanting home inspections. They were wanting these, really high adoption fees. And it was just kind of ridiculous to even get approved to go on a wait list to get a dog. So while we tried that avenue originally, we ended up going with just your average, Joe Schmo who was rehoming their dog. Now, before I went to pick up the dog, her name is Angel, before I went to go pick her up, they explained that she had a hernia and that she would need surgery, which is why they were rehoming her. And so I talked to my dad about it. He said, he researched it, said, hey, you know what? I think that's something we could handle. I'm happy to help a dog who obviously needs surgery. The family was very large, had lots of children. They couldn't afford it. So he said, okay, yeah, go check out the dog. If the dog has a good temperament, then let's do it. So long story short, I go, the dog has way more problems than they disclosed, but she is sweet as absolute perfect pie. One of the sweetest dogs I have ever met in my life, which is amazing considering the amount of abuse that she suffered, but that's another story. So we got her. I did give them money, even though I let them know that I really didn't want to, because the condition of the dog was such that I was going to have to spend a lot of money to get her in a healthy condition to then, get her to her forever home, which was with my dad. So, yeah. But I did it, even though I didn't want to, but I made it known to them that I was pretty appalled by her condition. And if you want to read the story about Angel, I think her name was Rory when we got her. Anyway, you can do a group search in the group, and I posted all about her story and her progress and showed all the pictures. We had to completely shave her down. It was rough. So anyway, if you were to ask my dad or his wife if they rescued a dog, they would absolutely tell you that they did, right? So the term rescue, right, gets thrown around in all of these different situations, but what you have to keep in mind is how you're explaining what happened, right? I just told you this whole story about how I gave money to a family that I really didn't want to because they had neglected their dog. I could have just said to you, oh yeah, I understand where you're coming from. My dad rescued a dog. Oh my God, she was in horrible condition. And he rescued her. You see what I'm saying? One story educates. One story is used to boost up another person's ego, right? And I don't mean ego in a bad way. We all have ego, right? Our own self-worth, our own, self-preservation, trying to make ourselves look good to others, right? So that is really where I draw the line. It's how do you tell your story? That's what's important. Are you trying to educate others? Were you in a position where you had to make a tough choice and say, well, I'm either going to give this family a couple $100 for this dog, or I'm going to have to walk away. And who knows if she'll get the health care that she needs, right? So not the same situation as buying from, a pet store, but it's all in how you tell the story. That is how you educate others. So Gail said, that's what happened to us. We paid $5,000. Yeah. $5,000 would buy you a show quality, top-notch, health tested, genetically tested, multiple year health guarantee dog, regardless of breed. $5,000 would buy you a dog who has undergone training to be a service dog. Just to kind of put things in perspective. Jaleesa said, I couldn't imagine paying that much money and not getting the complete rundown of puppy parents' tests. Geez. Yeah. So Jaleesa, part of that, to help defend people who have bought from pet stores, because I went with a friend to talk her out of buying from a pet store. So I sat through the whole spiel. So part of why people get roped into that is because they have an answer for everything. What they'll do is they'll show you AKC papers, but the papers are limited, which means that the dog cannot be used for breeding. But they don't point that out. So your average Joe consumer doesn't know that, which is what happened to this lady who sparked me to create this post. She had no idea. They'll also show you paperwork that shows the mom, the dad. It'll have a beautiful picture of them. That may or may not be the actual parents of the puppy, but it'll have a professional photographer picture of a dog that they're claiming are the parents. It'll have the breeder's info, but they won't give you that info to research it online unless you purchase the dog. So what they'll do is they'll show you part of it, but it won't be enough that you can research the dog. The other thing to keep in mind is that those puppy mills change their names, their kennel names constantly, because it is more advantageous for them to pay the fee to have a name change for their business than it is to be caught as a puppy mill, because there are groups obviously that go around and expose them all the time. So, you know, they'll show you vet paperwork where the puppies had all of their dewormings and shots, right? They work very, very hard to make it seem legit. The part that they're not telling you is that the other puppy that came with them got very, very sick. They don't take the puppies out of the store. They have a mobile vet that comes to the store to service them. The vet prescribed medication that the teenagers who work at the pet store didn't give to the puppy on a regular basis, so it died. And now it's in the freezer because they have to account for that loss. That's the part they didn't tell you. And then what they did was they lost money on that puppy, so they jacked up the price of the puppy that you're looking at. Oh, well, we lost $500 on that puppy. We'll just add it to the other one. That's the difference. That's what pet stores do. That's the part that you don't see. You don't see the part where the puppies are so run down and exhausted from constantly being pulled out of the crates, right, and the glass enclosures to play with people who are not watching their children, who are playing with the puppy as rough as they care to then turn around and put it back because they don't want that puppy. Let's look at the other one. I'm not even referring to all of the people who just go to play with puppies. It's bad. It's bad. So Gail said, we weren't educated until I found this site. I feel like I saved her life. She almost died the next day. Vet wasn't sure she would make it. Now I'm educated. See, Gail, that's fantastic. And essentially you did. You saved her life. And the important part is your very last line. Now I'm educated. That one line means more to me than you saving the dog's life. I know you feel differently because it's your dog, and I get it. But for me, on the outside, I've never met your dog, right? I don't have an emotional connection to your dog. I have a connection to you. When your picture pops up on the screen and your name pops up, I recognize it. I am connected to you. So when you say to me, I didn't know until I joined your group, that is powerful. That is meaningful. That is what I encourage you to share with others. And that's fantastic. And thank you for sharing about your dog. And I'm so glad that she has you. I'm so glad that she has you. Because who knows what would have happened if you hadn't been there, right? Sometimes we are in a certain place at a certain time for a very real and very good reason. So I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to diminish that at all, because I'm not. I am encouraging others to think critically, right? We are in an age now where buyers are more educated than they've ever been. I had somebody just message me the other day. We haven't even had our first poodle litter yet. I had somebody message me the other day, and they wanted to inquire about health testing for one of our dogs who's not old enough to have her hips x-rayed yet. I cannot tell you how thrilled I was. And I said, hey, this is great. I love that you're asking me for this information. I'm sorry, but the specific dog that you're inquiring about is not old enough yet. So we will be doing that, and I'll be able to provide that to you in the future. I just don't have it to provide to you now. So, but I love that people are getting out there and they're educating themselves on what to look for. I think it's great, and I think it will only encourage breeders to do better and be better, because you have to vote with your dollar, right? You guys are the consumers. If you opt, and I tell this to people all the time when they post in other groups about how they're looking for a cheap dog, if you opt to purchase from a responsible breeder who's doing the right thing, then those breeders who are not doing the right thing, they will move on to something else because they can't make money at it. So, Cheryl says hello, and I say hello. Oh, Brenda's giving me an update on her puppies. Just wanted to let you know the liver water was wonderful. Thank you. She is doing well and is still super tiny at 2 weeks old, 8 ounces. Okay, 8 ounces is still good. It's still good. Another question, off topic, that's okay. If you can have an 8-week-old pom puppy, have been working with her, trying to get her to play and interact, but she's so timid she plays with the other puppy fine. Okay, so I don't know if you just got this 8-week-old pom puppy. If you did, I recommend that you give them a little bit of time, especially if they came from one of those breeders like I'm talking about who, you know, just keeps their puppies alive until 8 weeks but doesn't really do anything with them. So, give her some time. The other thing you can do is spend a lot of one-on-one time with the puppy. That's gonna be huge. I'm glad that the puppy is playing with other puppies fine. That's definitely good. But what you need to do is spend one-on-one time with the puppy so that she can have more of that bond with you. You don't want her to just bond with the other puppy. So spend time with her, do training. Even at 8 weeks old, you can teach them to sit. You can teach them to follow your hand, right? Some trainers call that targeting, where you teach them to touch your hand. You can even, what's really great for pom puppies is you can teach them to fetch, or at least to go get an item, right? To chase after it. That's a really good one. Yeah, just put in the time with the puppy and see if after a week or two of working with the puppy one-on-one, see if there's a difference. Usually it just kind of takes them some time, especially if you have a puppy who's timid. It can take some time for them to kind of come around. Jaleesa said, hurt feelings wake people up sometimes. Yes. Absolutely. I deal with that on a daily basis, again, mostly when it comes to talking to people about what they're feeding their dogs. But in the case of, you know, where they got their dog from, yes, absolutely. Okay, Carrie says, my babies are on Nature's Logic and now are pooping white, hard, chalk-like stools. What does that mean? So when the stools are white, that means too much calcium. So, Carrie, you'll have to let me know what treats or chews you're giving them, because that could potentially be the issue. If not, then I would move them to another food, because Nature's Logic does have a higher calcium phosphorus ratio. It's fine. It's well within range, but it doesn't work for all dogs. So, or all puppies, I should say. So, yeah. Let me know if you're doing any chicken feet, chicken necks, turkey necks, right? Things like that. Raw meaty bones, right? Then you could be feeding too much bone. If it's just the kibble, then I would move them to another food. Crystal said, I get some flack because I bought a puppy from a breeder and didn't rescue one. Yes, that is a big thing. That is a push that happened from, I think it was PETA and another company, that was the whole adopt, don't shop, which we are still fighting today. Because what people don't realize is that dogs who end up in shelters are not bred by responsible breeders, right? They're bred by backyard breeders or your neighbor who let their dog get pregnant, right? And then just took the puppies to the shelter rather than trying to do something with it. I drove by a house the other day, we live out in the country, and there was a sign up, a wooden sign that said free puppies. Well, I can tell you that's not a responsible breeder, right? I did originally look into adopting from a rescue and humane society, but the ones in my area require a fenced-in yard. In parentheses, she said, I understand why. I don't have a fenced-in yard and went to a breeder who was highly recommended and couldn't be happier with my puppy. His parents are AKC registered, but also had genetic testing, lots of hands-on attention. Good. This video makes me feel better about our decision. Good. Yeah, the thing with rescues and shelters and things, I think that they start out having the best of intentions. I'm going to tell you the story about my coworker. Great guy. Really, really funny, awesome guy. He was one of those adopt, don't shop. This is one of those areas where he and I just didn't meet eye to eye, which is fine. I'm okay with that. So he was very adamant about purchasing from a rescue, which, side note, that's what it is. You're purchasing from a rescue. I digress. So he had applied and interviewed at all of these different rescues and was having no luck. And he came to me and said, he was like, hey, Allie, can you help me? Because I can't give any of these rescues, they won't give me the time of day. They interview me and then I don't get approved. Mind you, he has a really nice house. He has a beach house. He and his wife make a crap ton of money. They have a boat. They are living it up. Their elderly dog that they had, he so much as sneezed and that dog was going to the vet. I mean, to say that they poured all of their love and money into this dog is an understatement. But these rescues wouldn't give them the time of day because they didn't have a fenced-in yard. So what did they do? They fenced in their yard. And they still couldn't get approved. They claimed it was because both of the people living in the home worked outside of the home. And he was like, I have a dog sitter who comes to the house twice a day for my senior dog to let them out and play with them for an hour. He's like, I'm literally spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars every week so that my dog does not have to stay home alone all day long. He still couldn't get approved. So for me, he was a responsible pet owner, right? He realized, okay, mind you, he worked from home sometimes. He realized, hey, I'm going to be outside of the home for 9 hours. And I'm going to have a pet sitter come and take my elderly dog out twice a day. right? He doesn't need a fenced-in yard for that. There are plenty of people who don't have fenced-in yards who take their dogs for a walk on a leash. Go figure, you can take your dog out on a leash. Oh my God. Right? But to this rescue, it's all about black and white checking boxes on a sheet. And if they can't check off all the boxes, you're not getting one of their dogs. Perfect example, a family member of my wife, she was telling me the story about how she tried to get a dog from a rescue and couldn't because the vet had botched the paperwork of her previous dog who had passed away, and they never marked him as neutered. But he was neutered, and they did the neuter there, and they had all of the paperwork. But because they didn't check a box that said neutered, the rescue said, "Oh no, we called your vet and it said your last dog wasn't neutered. We're not gonna adopt a dog to you." And she's like, "Okay, the dog was neutered, but okay, just give me one that's already neutered then. I'm okay with that if you don't trust me." It's ridiculous. It's gotten out of hand. So anyway, I got off on a tangent. Crystal, I'm sorry. Crystal, I am so glad that you purchased from a responsible breeder, right? And that posts like this make you feel better, because our group is a safe place for people who do rescue, for people who breed, right? But I like to put things in perspective. Not everybody has a fenced-in yard, right? Just like not everybody has $10,000 to drop on a dog, right? But there's a happy medium, and we can all get there if we work together. So, all right, let's keep scrolling. Kathy says, "Hey, Allie, good to see you." Hey, Kathy, good to see you. Okay. Okay. Jordan says, "To start off, I'm 100% for golden doodles and labradoodles. My first service dog is a golden doodle. I do think they can be responsibly bred." Yes, absolutely. I am part of a group where there are breeders who responsibly breed them, despite the fact that most are not. Yeah, it's unfortunately true. So I have nothing against them, but obviously they can't truly AKC register except for the partner program. Yes, that's true. But most pet stores will still advertise these doodles and other mixed breed as AKC registered. Yes. Yes, they will, because buyers are not educated about what AKC is. So they just know from other people telling them that AKC is good, which is why I always tell people it's a business. It's neither good nor bad. It has a purpose. That doesn't make it good. It also doesn't make it bad. It makes it a business. So, they pass them off as purebred. It just shows how sketchy they are. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I did have to remove, just a side note, thank you for reminding me. I did have to remove a couple of comments in the group specifically where people got off topic and started talking about hybrid breeders. That is not allowed in my group, right? We are not here to pass judgment on what anyone decides to do with their breeding program. Whether I agree with it or not, whether you agree with it or not, is irrelevant. What is relevant is the exact point that Jordan just made. If someone is a hybrid breeder and they're doing all of the genetic and health testing for both of those breeds, it actually doubles up the amount of work they have to do, then they are a responsible breeder. Now, there are preservationist breeders and others who feel very strongly about this, and there's a lot of politics in it, and I get that. I would encourage everyone to remember that that's not what my group is about. It's about nutrition and responsible breeding. That's it. That's where I draw the line. There are a lot of people who have opinions about Merle Poodles and Doodles and Pomachis and all of this stuff. And it's okay to have those opinions. Whether you are 100% against it or 100% for it, that's okay. We can all still meet together in the middle and be kind to each other about it. So I did have to remove quite a few comments about people who just wanted to bash hybrid breeders, and that's not what my post is about. Excuse me. It's also not what my group is about. So I did have to delete those. So again, if you don't agree with it, that's okay. You're entitled to have that opinion. You just can't shove it down the throat of everybody else, right? It's not going to create the kind of environment that I'm going for, right? We want to be positive. We want to educate. I can't get through to people to do better if they're being bashed, right? Because they're not going to be open to doing better. So Jordan, you made a very good point, and thank you for making it. Gail said, Petland employees play doctor. I've seen the videos of the puppies in freezers from undercover videos. Yeah. Yeah. And all of the puppies that are in the back in cages, all of those puppies are sick. That's why they're back there. Not in the front where the glass is, where people can, pull them out to play with them. Amy says, breeders have invested far too much to turn over their puppies to someone else to rehome with unknown people. Yes, thank you. That is absolutely it. Also, amazing breeders need to stay in contact with their clients so we can access our lines years down the road. Yes, that is one of the ways that breeders find out if there's a problem, right? Is by having that open communication with previous buyers. So absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Kathy said, not too many are dedicated like you. Thank you for this info. Thank you. I bought my first puppy in 2000. Luckily, the dog needed surgery on her leg and they reimbursed me, but that was a while ago. Not sure they do that anymore. So I'm not sure if you're saying you purchased a puppy from a pet store and they reimbursed you for her leg, but yeah, I mean, they have all sorts of different plans that you can sign up for, different health plans. A lot of them require insurance because they know statistically there is a very high rate that the puppies will have problems. So, okay. Jordan said, another thing that ropes people in is that you can interact with the puppies. Yeah. When I was in college, I used to play with the puppies whenever I missed my family dogs at home. And even knowing how bad pet stores are, I feel like I would have impulsively bought a couple. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, it pulls at your heartstrings. Yeah. If I had the money or credit to. In that moment, emotions definitely can take over logic. There you go. She hit it right there on the head. So I can't imagine how it is for people who don't know better. Yeah. Well, they don't know better, so they just buy them. Yeah, I used to do that in college. But I would go and I would get the puppies that just looked absolutely exhausted. They were usually the most beautiful options available in that store. And everybody wanted to get their hands on them. And I would sit down with the puppy in a little cubicle and let the puppy sleep on my lap. And when people would come over, right, the employees, they'd be like, oh, we fell asleep. You want me to get them? And I'm like, no, 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 we're good. Right? And just give the puppy a break. They are so overstimulated. It's crazy. I mean, when we have puppies and when we bring dogs into our breeding program, they have mandatory nap time. I encourage people who get puppies to have a quiet place where their puppy can go and eat their food, where they can get away from all the noise and the hustle and bustle. Like, people forget that these puppies that are 8, 9, 10 weeks old, they have literally been alive for just a few months. 10 weeks. I mean, think about how fast that goes. Just yesterday, it was a year ago, right? 10 weeks. That's how long they've been alive. And most of that time was spent with their mom and siblings. They don't know anything else. So, yeah, it's absolutely emotional to see them. And they're puppies. I mean, who doesn't love puppies, right? Okay, Carrie clarified her post earlier. She said no treats, just food. Okay, so I would say that that food is not agreeable to your dogs, and I would try something else. Because, yeah, the white poop means that the calcium level is too high. So, I would just opt for another food that's on the recommended food list in the group, and that should help. Okay. I gotta make some of these comments bigger because we got lots of wordy comments and it smushes them down and makes them small. Amy says, we had a pup like that once, did a lot of treats, then he would go in our lap, and when he would do hard things, within 2 weeks, he was a different dog. Yeah, sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. I can only assume something happened during a fear period, right, which is a very big deal. That I didn't notice. Yeah. Or, right, like you said, that you didn't notice or that you weren't even there for, right? Sometimes during a fear period, puppies can have interactions with each other or with an adult dog that you may not even see. They may have an interaction with a bug that scares them. Because they're babies, right? They're like, oh my God, what is this stick bug? I've never seen this before. And it goes at them with their thingies, right? And they're like, this is terrifying. Everything is terrifying. The world is terrifying, right? And they're like, we're out of here, right? So it can be something as simple as that. You just gotta work with them and kind of bring them out of it. So, yeah. Okay, Gail says, my dogs like the dehydrated raw, but they seem to like the open farm gently cooked. They ate it first day. Now they won't touch it. I'm on the lookout for another good brand. I am currently using the Tylee's gently cooked pork recipe, which is the only one that's approved because it doesn't have problematic ingredients. It is delivered frozen from Chewy.com. And the dogs are loving it. So if you want to try that one, you absolutely can. The other thing to keep in mind is make sure you read the file on picky eaters. We have a lot of people in the group who have picky eaters that are constantly changing their food, trying to find something that they'll eat long term. And dogs are very smart. And they will figure out a way to manipulate you into doing what they want, which is, hey, I want something new, right? So it's not out of malice, or, you know, I'm not trying to assign them human emotions or motivations, but they do figure out, hey, if I just don't eat, then mom will fix up my food and make it fancy, right? So just be careful about changing the food regularly because of a picky eater. Sometimes the best thing you can do is put the food down and make them eat it. And if they don't eat it, you just put it up, put it back in the refrigerator, give it again at the next meal. So make sure you read the picky eater file and follow it so that you don't get caught in that cycle. I know that some dogs are more difficult than others. It is possible to break them out of that cycle, but definitely think about trying the Tylee's gently cooked pork recipe, because I was very impressed with how it was packaged and came to me. I'm actually going to be doing a video on that, and the dogs are just woofing it down. Even my senior Pomeranian, who is a picky eater, loved it. So Marissa said, I'm so over the adopt, don't shop. Reputable breeder would not let their puppies go to a shelter. Yeah, so one of the clauses that breeders include in their contracts, which is another part of being a responsible breeder, is that puppies or dogs who can no longer be cared for, or whatever the circumstances are, that they go back to the breeder, right? So the breeder can find them, get their, vet work updated, right? And provide them either a forever home themselves by taking them back, or finding them an appropriate home. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Marissa. Hey, Rosalind says, hey, Allie, nice to catch you live. It's been a doozy. It's been a doozy. I'm glad you're here. Marissa said, what's the deal with Merle Poodles? Oh my God. All right. Well, Marissa, you've done it now. You've opened up the can of Merle Poodles. The Merle Poodle can of worms. Okay. Let me explain. So, when you trace back the lineage of poodles, they came in very specific colors and patterns, right? Which is true of any breed. Part of starting a dog breed is that there are colors or patterns that are acceptable within the breed, and then there will be others that are deemed not acceptable. This is part of how you create a breed, how you standardize the breed, so that you can kind of streamline how the dogs look. So I just wanted to kind of backpedal and explain that. With poodles, they did not originally come in Merle, right? Merle is a pattern. It's very common in herding breeds like Australian Shepherds, right? Well, there's a whole bunch of them. So the thought is that at a certain point, many, many generations ago, people mixed in the herding breeds or a dog who had Merle to then create Merle Poodles, and then bred those Merle Poodle mixes back to poodles, and to poodles, and to poodles, and to poodles. And so if you were to genetically test those dogs, they would show up as 100% poodle. Because with genetic testing, it only goes back so far, and it's not 100% accurate. So, poodle breeders who feel very strongly about this will jump all over anyone with a Merle Poodle and say, oh, it's a mixed breed, poodles don't come in Merle, right, blah, 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 and just basically bash them. here's the thing about Merle. Excuse me. So there is a big misconception that Merle dogs are not healthy, which is not true. Any dog of any color or pattern can be unhealthy, right? That goes back to the genetic testing and looking for genetic disorders, right? Specifically with Merle, not to get too technical, specifically with Merle, it becomes very problematic when you breed it to another Merle. And I encourage anyone who is breeding or wants to breed Merle in any breed that they do the necessary research about Merle, because it is a lot more detailed than what I'm explaining here. But basically, most people have heard you don't breed Merle with Merle because you can create puppies who are deaf or blind or worse. So there are also some genetic disorders that were carried by those herding breeds. For example, I think it's the MDR1, that's the sensitivity to different flea and tick meds, right? It can be deadly to them. They carry the sensitivity for that. And so now we're starting to see that in poodles, right, who have Merle, who either are Merle or have Merle in the lineage. So breeders are upset about that. The other time that Merle can be very problematic, and this is the one that I see most of, that really bothers me, is people breeding Merle to light colors. For example, white, cream, apricot, red, right? And the reason why that's problematic is because of the genetics of how those colors work. And I'm going to speed up here because I'm probably losing a lot of you. You're like, right? Not everybody likes genetics. Basically, light colors can cover up the Merle so that the dog doesn't look Merle, but it genetically is Merle. And then they sell that to a pet home, right? Thinking, oh, okay, well, it's not a big deal that they don't know that the dog is Merle. Then that pet home doesn't do any testing. Turns out the dog is Merle, and they breed to a Merle because they haven't done any research. Now you've just created double Merle puppies, some of which who will be blind or deaf or worse. So it's a problem. But most people don't realize that you have to put in that kind of work and that kind of research before you breed a Merle dog. So it's problematic all around. There are breeders who have Merle dogs, who have Merle poodles, who do the appropriate research, right? And then there are others who are just adamantly against it. They bash them every time they see them, whether it's a breeder, a pet owner, it doesn't matter, they will attack them online. And this is one of those areas where poodle people can be pretty vicious. So that's the story of the Merle poodle. Now, for my 2 cents, just to throw it in there, I think that it is only a matter of time before all breeds have Merle in them. We as humans like pretty things. It's just the truth of the world. We like things that are pretty. And Merle dogs are pretty. Whether you support them or not, I think that we can all be objective and agree that they are pretty. And they are unique. Each individual has its own pattern, and each litter of Merle puppies is like you never know what you're gonna get, right? But they're gorgeous. and that's why people like them. So I think that as time goes on, we will find that a lot of people are mixing in dogs who have Merle into breeds that previously did not have Merle as an option for coloring. So I think that's just what's going to happen, because Merle sells, because it's pretty, which kind of is the problem that some breeders have with it. Sherry said, I just love you, your spirit and attitude. Thank you, Sherry. I love you too. I get pretty passionate about things. And while it's never my intention to hurt somebody's feelings or to make them feel bad, I do push people to do better and be better. I push myself to do better and be better, right? I don't just ask it of you. I do it myself. And sometimes it's hard. So that's why I like that we have this community that we have, so that we can all support each other through it. So Jordan said, a lot of poodle people are purists, will never consider Merle poodles purebred, right? Because Merle apparently isn't supposed to be in the poodle bloodlines, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Marissa said, but isn't that how you get a breed? Crossbreeding. Yes. And crossbreeding is actually very complicated. Most breeders are not familiar with crossbreeding. It's also how breeders can introduce new and or better genetics into their lines, right? So crossbreeding or hybrid breeding is not always a bad thing. I know that there are some breeders who would, like to hang me for that, but it's true. Sometimes you can't have a stagnant group of individuals and have them constantly breeding with each other, because you're going to end up with a lot of inbreeding, a lot of incestuous breeding that can lead to recessive disorders becoming rampant, right? It can be problematic if you just have one little group that's doing all of the mating. Sometimes you have to go outside of that group. For example, they had this issue when they were trying to repopulate tigers and also wolves. Tigers over here in Asia, wolves over here in the US. So they had to introduce essentially dogs into the wolf population to help build it up. They had to introduce other varieties of tigers into the area to boost up the population. They had to breed tigers here to then relocate them there, right? It can be very complicated. But yeah, outcrossing, crossbreeding, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Everybody's gonna start barking now. Velocity, come lay down. Come here. Anyway. But yes, that is how you get a breed. And there are a lot of breeds that nobody has ever heard of, right? I actually considered getting into wind sprites, which for those of you who've never heard of one, make sure you Google it, because oh my gosh, they're gorgeous. But essentially it's a long-haired whippet, and it was a created breed. So yeah, and Amy said it represents hung papers when a Merle is introduced. Yeah, this is the other side of the problem. So because Merle is not listed as an accepted color in AKC, for dogs to be AKC registered who are Merle, essentially people are lying on the papers, because they'll pick something else like black and white party or, another color variety, because Merle is not an option to choose from. This is also true of Frenchies. There are a lot of color variations that are not accepted as part of the standard, and so people just put down a color, right? And then they go on with their happy lives. This is another reason why it's important to remember that AKC and other registries are just that, a registry. It's not a regulatory entity that's doing anything other than keeping track of what people report. That's the puppy. She's got to go potty, so I'm going to have to cut this short. Yeah, so Marissa said, I have an AKC registered poodle. Her mother was an AKC registered Merle. Yeah, so if you look at the paperwork, like her actual registration papers, right? Not Your Puppy's papers, or I guess it would be listed on Your Puppy's papers. It's not going to say the word Merle, right? It will say black and white, or black and white party, or, you know, brown and white party, right? It'll say something else other than Merle. And that is part of the issue that some people have with those dogs being AKC registered. Okay, I'm gonna have to skim through here because I'm gonna have to let my puppy out. She's gotta go. Okay, Rosalind said, just want to say thank you. You're very welcome. Just had my palm titered, and she had good values for parvo and distemper, 0 for hepatitis, and unfortunately in Singapore, all out core vaccines are lumped together. The vet wanted to give her all core vaccines plus lepto plus 2 flu jabs. Is that new? You should be able to get the shot without the lepto. I do not recommend lepto at all, ever, regardless of the dog, but especially for small dogs. So if you can get it without the lepto, then, you know, if you have to do it, then you have to do it. You just have to think about, you know, is your dog at risk? I'm sure that there are some dogs who are at risk, right? They spend a lot of time outside. They spend a lot of time in rural areas where they could come in contact with something else that could be infected, right? You just have to assess the level of risk your dog is at. For example, my senior Pom, he is at higher risk of creating a bed sore on his body because all he does is sleep. He's probably not at risk for coming into contact, right, with something that would be problematic for him. So, you know, he goes outside to go potty and comes back in. That's it. So just keep that in mind. See if you can get the shot without the lepto. Again, if your dog is not coming into contact with other dogs, I'm not sure that a flu shot is necessary. You just have to, you know, weigh the pros and cons. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Marissa said, I thought Merle was only bad if it was a double Merle. Correct. Double Merle is bad. My girl's parents are genetically tested in their hips and knees. Good. Those are all tested. So wouldn't that be considered reputable breeding? This is when you get into the area of opinion, right? And what do we know about opinions? Everybody's got one. So for my opinion and my purposes, right, which is, I don't care what you breed, do it responsibly. So for me, yes, I would classify that breeder as a responsible breeder. For other poodle breeders, where their goals and their passions are different than mine, they are more concerned with preserving the breed, the structure of the breed, the colors, the integrity, right? You'll hear them talk a lot about integrity. For them, they would be adamantly against a Merle breeding regardless of the health testing. So this is where Marissa, it really just depends on who you talk to. And not just who you talk to, but what's important to them. I am perfectly capable of having an opinion about something and being able to recognize the good in something, right? So if my opinion is that mixed breeding is not a good idea, or that breeding Merle into breeds who do not already have Merle, if I think that's a bad idea, I am still able to step back from that and say, well, clearly this breeder is doing the right thing, right? They're genetically testing, good. They've got hips, knees, etc. All of those are good things. Not everybody can do that. Sometimes they are completely blinded by their passions. So if you were asking me for my opinion, I would say yes, that sounds like a breeder who is trying to do the absolute best for their dogs that they are breeding, and I would say that that's a good thing. And that you, right, purchasing from them, right, you did your research about genetic testing, about health testing, you did the right thing. When it comes to the color part, there are always going to be people that have an opinion about that. But for me, that's not the most important part. So I hope that better explains it for you. There are a lot of people that will disagree with me, and that's okay. It's okay. It's okay if they have a different opinion, right? So Teresa said, Tylee smells delicious for the humans. It really does. That's actually one of the points that I make in my video is I opened the bag and I was like, holy cow, this smells great. Which is always a good sign, right? Because it smells like real food. I think I likened it to meatloaf. It smells like meatloaf. So hit that heart button if you, or that like button if you like meatloaf. Just give me a thumbs up. Let me know, because I'm not ashamed to say that I like meatloaf. So, hey, there we go. I got some likes. All right. People like meatloaf. Okay, great. Jordan said they do the same thing with silver labs. Yes, exactly. See, every breed has it. Okay, great. I just want to make sure before we close up that I don't miss anybody's questions. And if I did miss your question, I'm so sorry. We got so many comments on this, which is great. Okay. Marissa said, you opened my eyes to reputable breeding. Fantastic. So I would challenge you, go out and open somebody else's eyes, right? I did good. I talked to you. You did good, right? You learned. Now go out and teach somebody else. And that was the whole point of the post that I made, which was the whole original part of this video about, talking to people about where pet store puppies come from. So Marissa said, I do. Excellent. I have no doubt that you do. High five. Good job. So yeah. She said, people ask me all the time about them. Good. Good. So, I know that we went over some really challenging topics today. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being part of the group. Again, I know that there were some people who were offended or put off by my post. To all of you who were upset, I'm sending you big hugs. I am sending you the biggest, warmest, squishiest hug right now. You have no idea. I know that I push people to their boundaries sometimes, and I challenge them. And I know that that can be hard. So I don't want you to think for 1 minute that I don't appreciate you, that I don't appreciate your comments, your stories, your pictures that you share. I absolutely do. Every single day. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone who commented on the post and who commented here. And don't forget, be kind, rewind.